here does nothing. No. Shit. Hopefully I'll find editing software to cut off the beginning. At any rate, it's about Labor Day. It's a great time to be going out and collecting seeds for the most part, and figured I'd talk a little bit about that, because I do an awful lot of it. The best places to go, usually not so much your more touristy parks, but if you have state forests, or around here we got state game lands, you know, public wild areas that really aren't full of you know, kids, tourist attractions, everything else running all over the place. It's usually a little bit less hectic. Let's see. Good idea is to go find what the hell you want to get seeds of before it's actually going to seed. So that way you can come back to it. And obviously different things you collect different ways. Sometimes you can collect things off the ground. Very often you have to climb up a tree to get something good. Especially a lot of places around here, like walnuts in certain areas, the ones on the ground are duds. They're there because the squirrels didn't eat them. And the squirrels didn't eat them because they know they're duds. You know, they've got insects that ate into them while they were developing or whatever. Kind of varies. Some things you can pick up off the ground. Sometimes you get lucky, especially in areas with red squirrels. Red squirrels tend to collect pine cones, and a lot of times they drop good ones on the ground. What else? When you collect things, I usually like bringing along little bags like this, marking them with a Sharpie so I know what I've got. That can be a problem. If you don't mark them, you think you'll remember, you don't. Paper bags sometimes work better for things that are a little greener, maybe a little bit more moisture content, because it keeps them contained in there, lets them dry, and you know, if it's something like a pine cone or something where, or even these little things like where the seeds come out. See, those are the seeds. The rest is just the flower heads from some bee balm here. Usually you put this in like a paper bag. It's a little bit green, let it dry out. Otherwise, if you put it in a plastic bag before it gets sort of drier like these are, it tends to get you know, moldy, things like that. You want to avoid mold at all costs. Moldy seeds tend to be bad seeds. Even if it's something that's inside of a fruit or a berry or something, and the flesh gets moldy, the seeds might be alright, they might not. I've had a lot of problems with them being duds if they get that mold on them. Usually the best place to store things, unless you want them to sprout right away, is in the fridge. Some things, you know, they'll store over a season at a, you know, a fairly dry moisture content, just like seeds for your garden or whatever. Even seeds for your garden, they'll last years longer if you save them in the fridge. Looking at my little cheat sheet here, sorry about that. Yeah, especially with like fruits or even things with big husks, like this guy here. This is a hickory nut. A lot of times you want to, like, I let this guy dry a little bit. Now you can kind of take this husk off, because the husk will tend to attract rot and mold and things like that. A lot of your seeds from wild plants, they need pre-treatment. If you get a book like this, this will help you sometimes on when they go to seed and how long you got to do what to them. And there's two basic things. There's scarification and stratification. Scarification is basically for berries, fruits, things like that, where their method of reproduction basically involves being eaten by a bird or an animal. The seeds pass through the digestive system whole, but going through the digestive system breaks down the seed coat a little bit. Now, a larger seed, like say this hickory nut here, hickory nuts don't really need it, but if certain, like Kentucky coffee tree, fairly large bean-looking seeds, you can nick them with a Dremel to penetrate the seed coat. You always want to nick them. If you look at them, there's a stem side and there's a side away from the stem. Always nick the side away from the stem. Dremel with a little engraving tool does good on larger seeds. You don't want to try it on smaller seeds. You'll wreck your fingers. Commercially, what they usually do is they soak them in acid. So depending on the strength of the acid, they'll soak them for a certain length of time. It varies by the type of seed and everything. You got to look up the specifics for the specific seeds. I usually don't go into that. I do things small enough. I'm usually using the Dremel, or I've tried just using vinegar. Sometimes vinegar works, sometimes it needs to be a little bit stronger, but usually vinegar is roughly equivalent to stomach acid. You just got to use it longer, where you might use a stronger acid for an hour, you might want to soak it for 8 hours. The other thing is stratification. Stratification is basically simulating winter. Now those seeds, like say a silver maple, they go to seed in spring, you got the little helicopters everywhere. A month later they're popping up in every crack in the sidewalk, at least in this part of the country. But things that go to seed in the fall, which is most things, they don't want to sprout right away because the seedlings will have to worry about freezing. So they stay dormant until it gets warm. They need a certain period of cold, and then they'll sprout. Some things won't sprout the first year even. Sometimes you got to repeat it several times. This little guy right here, that's a paper birch. It's 2015 Labor Day today, and this guy's from 2013. He just sprouted this year. Usually what I find the best way to do it is basically plant them and go through the refrigeration process planted. They don't need to be frozen to simulate the winter. 40 degrees in the fridge, normal fridge temperature is fine. Or you can put them in an unheated outdoor building that's safe from rats and mice, like I used this garage last year. This guy right here just sprouted. He needs transplanted really soon because he's kind of looking wilty. But these little deli containers work really well. You fill them about a third to half of the way with dirt, plant your seeds, creates like a little terrarium, holds in the moisture. Moisture is a big thing because you don't want them too wet, but a lot of things, if you let them get too dry, the seeds die. Larger seeds, this often works well. Plant them in a, this little Wendy's cup, but these larger cups work well. Sometimes, either for planting out or just for planting things and keeping the terrarium thing, get a clear cup, put it on top of one of these little these solo cups, poke a hole in the bottom. It's usually what I plant things into first when they're smaller seeds like this. Let's see what else there is. Sometimes with the pine cones, you got to I'll put them in a jar like this and set them on a windowsill. It'll open them up. They're used to opening up under the heat of the sun. If you wait for a pine cone to fall, they're usually crap. Their method is to open up on the tree, release all the seeds. The empty pine cone falls off like a year later. Nothing in it. Once they open up, like this guy opened up on my table, I didn't even have them in a thing. You can just kind of shake them, and the seeds come out like that. They're normally wind-blown seeds. Look kind of like a seed from a maple tree. This is the, don't really need the wing. I don't usually worry about taking them off though, but there you go. Any questions, post them in the comments. Hopefully not too awkward for our first video. Be at this again.